Joining us now on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline is Trevor Matich of ESPN College Football Insider, BYU National Champion. Trevor, how was your weekend of college football?
Spencer, it was crazy. Alabama melts down and gets crushed at home. Notre Dame, with a backup freshman quarterback, beats a great Georgia Tech team. And BYU, I called them to win outright. They almost shocked the world, didn't they?
They did, and it was a one-point game, and BYU led for most of that game. What sticks out to you the most as you remember what happened Saturday night?
How well they played. I mean, on offense especially, UCLA took away the deep ball. They figured that Tanner Mangum would not be able to matriculate the ball down the field just with dinks and dunks and be consistent enough to be able to make scoring drives that way. Well, he did. He worked the sidelines very well. The wide receivers very patient on those short outs and comebacks as they worked the ball down the field. They had 3 scoring drives of 10 or more plays. One of them was a 16-play drive where they moved the ball down and got a field goal. So I think it was a step forward for Mangum in the offense to be able to do that.
Trevor, you may have already alluded to this, but I'll ask the question anyway. Are you more optimistic or frustrated about what happened with BYU on Saturday night?
I'm very frustrated because the win was there to be had. But overall, I'm very optimistic just because of the nature of the weekend. I mean, BYU had 2 tough, emotional games and had to win both of those games with their backup quarterback in. Now they go to number 10, UCLA, that a lot of people have picked to win the Pac-12 and make the college football playoff. This is a game that UCLA needed to win and look good winning because it's one of those non-conference games that they want to impress the college football playoff committee with. BYU went in there as a 16.5-point underdog and had that thing. I mean, they was in a game of inches where just 2 or 3 plays make all the difference. That was the difference in a game BYU was not supposed to be able to stay that close in. And the fact that they were there and didn't just look like they belonged, they did belong, was very encouraging.
Yeah, I mentioned in the first segment before the season, if I had told you, Trevor, okay, Taysom Hill and Jamal Williams aren't going to play. In the first 3 games, BYU is going to trail in the last minute, and they're going to play a true freshman quarterback, yet they're going to win 2 of those. Your reaction would probably be positive, and that's where we stand right now, right?
Yeah, you'd be thrilled. You'd be absolutely thrilled. And I think where the frustration comes in is that it could have been 3-0. Of course, it could have been 0-3, but, they made the plays that they needed to make to get to 2-1. And you're right about that. I mean, as bad as this feels for BYU fans right now that they let that one slip away, it still is very encouraging because this month of September, now going to Michigan next week, to be 2-1 here with a chance to be 3-1 would put them in a position for a run at not necessarily the playoff, but a New Year's Six bowl, one of the top bowls. So BYU is in great position because they went out there and they've earned it.
Trevor Matich with us on the Deseret First Credit Union hotline, ESPN College Football Insider. Trevor, one of the biggest concerns coming out of the first 2 games for BYU this season was the lack of a run game. Well, Adam Hine runs for 149 yards on 23 carries. Do you feel like BYU can get enough with Adam Hine moving forward the rest of the season because of what he did against UCLA?
I think they can because they're starting to figure out what they can do. Hine really is not fast enough to threaten defenses on the edges. He'll get some plays out there, but what they figured out is that they're better off just running right at the defense, and a lot of their best runs came between the tackles. As a matter of fact, right up the middle over the center, Karoma. And that, I think, is a good thing to have figured out. Because, once you know what your guys can do, you can call the plays that put them in the best position. And really trying to outrun people on the edge with Hine is not the best way to go. But he's shown that he is a bulldozer, a pile driver, when he goes straight downhill. And he's made some big plays in the first 3 weeks of the season doing just that.
Okay, Twitter blew up about a bunch of things, and it always does. But 3rd and 5, late in the game, BYU had a chance to win the game if they score a touchdown on that drive, possibly. Robert and I calls a running play to Nate Carter. What did you see, and what did you think of that play?
I thought it was a good call, and I don't think it was overly conservative like Twitter seems to be thinking. Because keep in mind that BYU had gouged all 3 teams they've played so far, including UCLA, with runs up the middle. Remember against Boise State last week, BYU had a 2nd and 20 at the 21-yard line because they were pushed back by a penalty. 21-yard line, 2nd and 20. They ran the ball up the middle for a 21-yard touchdown. And so that was a play that there was full expectation that they could convert. And as a matter of fact, they just missed one block inside, or they probably would have converted that. And so when you add that expectation of succeeding with that play, to the fact that it takes away UCLA's greatest asset on defense in that game, which was coming with all kinds of crazy blitzes and pressure situations, which could lead to a sack, could lead to a turnover. You avoid what they do best, and you do what you still do quite well, which is that run up the middle. I thought it was a good play call, and I don't think it was overly conservative at all.
It's another Matich Monday on BYU Sports Nation. ESPN's Trevor Matich with us. You pointed out that BYU's wide receivers needed to go up and beast the ball away on the show last week. Did you see what you wanted to out of the BYU wideouts on Saturday night?
Yeah, I thought the receivers were magnificent because they didn't get the easy ones where the defense didn't think that Mangum could throw the ball as far as he could, and you'd have guys running wide open behind the defense, just standing in open grass waiting for the ball to come down for a 40-yard gain. On this one, they had to earn it. They had man coverage, press coverage. They were challenged physically by the UCLA secondary. They had to run outs and comebacks and hitches and routes that caused them, or didn't cause them, but routes that meant that they would be hit as soon as they caught that ball because that's how tight the coverage was. And yet they did it over and over and over again. And a lot of these long drives came because of the chemistry and the combination of Mangum to these receivers in those routes being very patient but consistently successful.
When you look at the freshman quarterback matchup, okay, obviously won by Tanner Mangum, but what stuck out the most about Tanner Mangum winning that matchup, and how did BYU neutralize Josh Rosen?
Well, Mangum what the book on him was go force him out of the pocket and don't let him go to his right, because he was very, very good in the first two games at rolling to his right and then making big plays. So UCLA wanted to keep him in the pocket or make him roll to the left. Well, he still did very well in doing that. So you saw progression from Mangum, even though UCLA tried to make him do what he was doing. On the other side of the ball, BYU's defense did an excellent job of bothering Josh Rosen. In other words, giving him blitzes and coverages that he wasn't comfortable with, and not necessarily getting to him and hitting him and sacking him so much as making him confused about what he saw or making him move his feet to where he couldn't just stand there and then do a snap, set, throw on rhythm kind of a thing. And so I thought that when Mangum was bothered, and he was bothered because they made him move a lot, he still was able to complete those passes and stay focused. And when BYU bothered Rosen didn't perform nearly as well.
UCLA rushes for a net of 296 yards, including 219 from Paul Perkins of UCLA. BYU is now going to face Michigan, a run-dominant team. Smash-mouth football is back under Harbaugh at Michigan. How concerned are you about the BYU run defense after what you saw against UCLA as they now approach Michigan, who likes to run it up the gut?
Well, from a coaching standpoint, what happened at UCLA is correctable. BYU gave up a lot of really long runs because guys didn't have good run fits on that play. They were slightly out of their gap, or guys missed the tackle at the point of attack, and then it was off to the races for Perkins and those runners for UCLA. Those things are correctable, and really BYU normally excels at being very disciplined in their alignment and assignment. And in this game, they weren't a couple of times. Now, part of that was fatigue towards the end of the game. And you really can't coach that. This is a supremely conditioned team, BYU. But when you're facing a team like UCLA without your best run stopper, who's out with an injury, their nose guard, then you've got to. It's just kind of tough at the end of the game. But I think against Michigan, it's that conditioning that worries me the most. Not conditioning, but I think the pounding, because they are well conditioned. They are good enough to put a good roadblock in front of that Michigan running game. In other words, to not necessarily stop it, but to not let them break out the way that Perkins and the UCLA running backs did because of slight mistakes. BYU is good enough to do that and correct that. The problem is, after three brutal games to start September, will they be beaten down a little bit? And will fatigue cause some of the missed tackles that I believe contributed to missed tackles late in the UCLA game? So really, to me, this is all about protecting their bodies in practice this week, because they're good enough to be able to do what they need to do to beat a Michigan team that is very physical and very good, but not as talented as UCLA.
Before this season, I think we thought that Jim Harbaugh and Michigan in Game 4 might learn some things that would make them a much tougher opponent for BYU than, say, the team from last year. However, they have improved. But I have not seen a Michigan team that I think is a huge threat to beat BYU this weekend. I think BYU is the better team, and I expect them to win. How do you feel about the matchup, Trevor?
I think BYU is vastly superior on offense. I think they've got their combination quarterback and receivers is much better than Michigan. The offensive line running back combination I think is about a wash. I mean they're both about in the same game. Both sides play very, very physical defense. Don't discount Michigan's defense. They are very, very good. But I think it's the quarterback and receiver combination that gives BYU the edge here. And as long as physically they're not too pounded down from those first 3 games, I think BYU can go up there and win this game. Again, it's for BYU, the key for them always on both sides of the ball is to make sure that if the other team makes a play, that they have to defeat a Cougar doing the right thing in the right place in order to make that play. And many of the big plays by the running game by UCLA were because there was not a Cougar in the exact right spot doing the exact right thing. And if they are there against Michigan, then BYU has the talent to match up very well with the Wolverines. And if they come out of September at 3-1, guys, that'll be a heck of a thing to crow about.
Oh, BYU currently a 5-point underdog. They've been an underdog in all of the first 4 weeks. Trevor Matich is the real Blue Steel on BYU Sports Nation.
No, I'm more like Taupe Putty, Taupe, Taupe Putty.
Trevor, great to talk to you, man. Thanks for the time.
All right, guys.